everybody. Welcome to the As You Are podcast. My name's Leslie Vandergens. I am the founder of Enso Coaching and Consulting, and I'm here with two of our amazing coaches, Adam and Kathleen, and our wonderful friend, Ginger Morris, who is the Executive Artistic Director of Impact Arts. If you don't know who she is, you should know because she is...
Well, you're about to.
You're about to. And then you're going to want to know more. You're going to know more. You should know her. She is making waves in the high school and the artistic community in Austin and the greater Austin area, really.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We're
More to
definitely
come.
stretching out as far as we can go.
Love it. Love it. Well, so Ginger, can you tell us a little bit about Impact Arts for people who don't know what Impact Arts is?
Absolutely. So we have multiple programs, obviously, that are part of Impact Arts. But I kind of have to actually go back 20 years to start this.
Yes. Go back 20 years.
Because Summer Stock Austin is kind of one of our cornerstone programs. And this is our 20th summer coming up.
Oh my gosh.
I know, kind of big
20th
crazy
anniversary.
news. Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so we started that 20 years ago. And I think 2 years prior to that, we started Texas Arts Project, which is a sleepaway camp for the performing arts. And then 11 years ago, we started the Heller Awards for Young Artists, which at the time was called the Greater Austin High School Musical Theater Awards.
Gasmata.
Easy to say.
Gasma.
Gatsma. And so basically about 3 years ago now, I believe, we started a nonprofit called Impact Arts. And prior to that, all of these programs were partnered with larger institutions. And we built a nonprofit, Impact Arts, to connect all of the work that we were doing with young people in the Austin area and beyond. And so now we are sort of figuring out how all of those things work together and trying to build more programming to support the students that are currently part of our programs and to expand our programs beyond where they are now.
That's amazing. Okay, so Kathleen was in one of the productions.
Yeah.
How many years ago was that?
It was in 2009.
Ooh.
Good for you for having it just that ready.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
I think so.
Yeah, it was.
It was Sweeney Todd.
15 years.
So
No.
wonderful. I mean, I think
It was.
the underlying layer of all of this is that these productions that you're putting on with these high school and college aged students is just amazing. I mean, there are professional productions that we see that don't have the level of quality, and I think that's one of the things that's just so amazing about this program that you guys lead.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think, I recently have sort of been talking about why we do what we do and the value of why we do what we do. And for me personally, it kind of goes back to my own experiences as a young person in theater, because I grew up in a small, it's not that small now, but it was very small when I grew up in McAllen, Texas, which is the bottom of Texas. And our theater program didn't have a lot of financial resources, but our directors believed in us in a very inspiring way, and they put a lot of care into our costumes and our scenery and kind of made us feel like we were doing shows that were more exciting and more lavish and more supported than they kind of were at the time. And there was a community theater about 20 miles away that we all spent our summers doing musicals in this little old water tower reservoir. Like it was in the round and it sat like 100 people, and it was very community driven. We painted the sets and we helped with the lighting and we did all the things and we helped sell tickets. This is a very, very much a community-focused sort of experience, and we all went back every summer to do this. And then I came to UT to study theater, and my first job was with Austin Musical Theater, which at the time was this massive professional musical theater company in town where they're like bringing in Broadway guest stars, and we're doing these shows at the Paramount that looked like Broadway shows. And I was 19 and had come from a little water tower reservoir community theater. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I did not know musicals could look and feel like that. And I remember after the first show, like peeking through the curtain to see the audience, and the audience literally like leapt out of their seats, clapping and crying. It was Peter Pan, so it was also very moving. And there were little kids, you know. And I remember my little 19-year-old heart feeling like bursting, seeing a musical do that for an audience. And I think, you know, flash forward to when I was starting programs for young people, and I was like, how do we bring that together? How do you create programs that feel like a community where everyone cares about each other and we have the same goal, but the goal is elevated?
Yeah.
So, and how do we all aspire to do work where we go, oh my gosh, how did we do that? And how did we, like, we couldn't have done that without each other.
Yeah.
But to a point where you are just so proud of yourself and each other that it feels like magic.
Yeah.
And which, you know, why not do theater that feels like that?
Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine like the experience that those individuals take with them from a community standpoint, like you just talked about, like them feeling together, them feeling the sense of accomplishment, and then creating something that is incredibly magical, which then makes it hard to like leave or like walk away from it, right? But how do you instill that level of quality? Because I think that every artist wants to have high quality stuff,
Of
right?
course,
Like I
of
don't
course.
One hopes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I don't know that any like artist
No
comes
one's
out
trying to.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, nobody's trying to do half
Right.
mediocre like stuff. But the thread is that the productions are always high quality.
Mm-hmm.
So what is it that you feel like you are doing or the team is doing? Like, how do you make sure that that continues to happen through all of these productions for the last 20 years?
Well, I think the team is important. So I think, as you said, I think it's pulling together people with the same goal.
Yeah.
So whether that is your designers, your directors, your choreographers, your production manager, your like literally every single person who is part of, you know, the person who's painting the set, the person, like everyone having the same goal, I think is vital to that process. It's like you cannot have anyone working on it that doesn't see the product at the same level, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, and I also think, having worked a lot with Ginger, spending all my days with Ginger, I think that also there's two productions kind of going on in a way. There's what you see in the theater as an audience member, but then there's what you don't see, which is the educational aspect of everything. And so it's not just the quality of the product that you see, and this makes it doubly challenging in some ways when you have a very compressed time frame and you have to have production team members who are very focused on mentoring and educational values at the same time. So it's in some ways, I think it's doubly impressive because you have to have both in this context, and both have to be of equal quality.
Yeah.
I have multiple times had people ask me, well, what's more important to you, the education or the product? And I will every time say they are equally important. If they're not, then one will be sacrificed. And yes, it's hard to do. That is true. And at any given moment, I do have to ask myself in the process, like, do I have time to make this a teaching moment? Or is this time to get to the show? Because it's a balance.
Which itself is a teaching moment.
Yeah.
Well, it's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
So I think that is an important part of it, is that there has to be both of those things. And hoping that when you are in, teaching and educating young people, that they are then able to take that and bring that back with them, so that that becomes easier over time when you have more and more people who have been through that process.
Yeah,
Totally.
absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about like your, because you were in it. I mean, Libby was too. She's not here today, but we've all been impacted by Ginger in some way, shape, or form, and we can all talk about that, because I also think there's like real huge success stories out of the program, which is another testament to your leadership and what you're doing in this community. And we can get to that because that's so special. But your experience, like, talk a little bit about like what Ginger has been and like what that process is like for you. Kathleen's crying. She's not a crier,
up.
you guys.
I'm not. Yeah, weird. Yeah, I mean, it just even in what y'all are talking about, where I wanted to chime in, that I think is, I'm just going to cry, is that like everyone is treated as a professional, no matter what their age is. And there are those levels of expectations. You do get to come in as an artist and a collaborator. And yes, there's mentorship and education, but there's no talking down to anyone, was at least my experience. And it was at a time too when like I had people, because I was doing shows all kind of around Austin, and I would hear people say, I don't want to listen to anyone under 25 and what their opinion is on this. And this was being said to me when I was 20, and it was like, oh, okay. This is, of course, not said in a setting with Ginger, but being in that setting where it's like there are high demands on people who are participating in it. There are the expectations that they will meet those demands, and you are supported in getting there. But there's, I think it's that like you rise up with the tide, and it is a setting that is absolutely rising people up with the tide. And I think in those lessons that you then take with you is seeing how possible it is, and how you are part of what makes it possible. Yeah, I mean, I really loved it. I have such fond memories. And I was actually at a callback over the weekend where there were people of all different ages there. And we were talking about summer stock. And it was funny because I was like, oh, I did it a million years ago. And someone else was like, me too, back in 2019. It's
so true.
But maybe some of that feeling of I did it a million years ago is that it's like, I did it at this time where it's really stayed with me. So it feels now a part of who I am. And I would say, like, I imagine if we filled this space, we couldn't fill this space with everyone who's ever participated in it. But I emphatically feel like you would hear a lot of echoing sentiments. And there are just so many things out there that are a testament to your work. And like, I think we can point to the like literally people on Broadway who've come out of what you've done, which I think for a lot of people in the industry is seen as the pinnacle, but also like, even if you don't reach Broadway, like the passion that comes out of it, that is so informative for people through the rest of their lives. And I'm going to say one more thing, sorry. Then it's kind of like reiterating on a point I made. I love producing content for younger people, and something I'm really passionate about is not talking down, that we are people at every single age, and treating people like people at every single age is so important. And I just see you doing that all the time, and it's really powerful.
Wow, thank you.
Well, how does that resonate? Is that something that's like something that is important to you guys?
Yeah,
as you're building?
I have a philosophy that, from an educational perspective, that if you treat kids like adults, they will give that back to you. They'll show up on time. They'll show up ready to work. When you talk down to them, you're going to get that back to you as well, Right. And so I normally say, like, treat them like adults and forgive them when they act like kids. So like, if you can, right now I'm working with the Select Ensemble, which is part of the Heller Awards. And early in the process, a lot of them, they are doing a million things. They have a lot of conflicts with the rehearsal process because they are doing a million things. And there are a lot of programs that are like, you can only miss 2 of our rehearsals and then you're cut, or, whatever. Yeah. Or at your school, you can only miss, blah, blah, blah. And I totally respect that. I choose, though, to say you're going to have to learn how to navigate your time and manage your time, even as high schoolers. So we don't give them a certain amount of days they can or can't miss. But we say, we're going to try to treat this like a professional atmosphere. And I'm going to ask you to respect this process by prioritizing your time. So because there are people counting on you. And really what we need is for you to communicate early about when you're going to miss so that we can actually schedule things around everyone.
Everybody's conflicts. Yeah.
And then there are certain days that we need everyone there, and I need you to prioritize those days. And that way they are starting to actually figure out for themselves how you navigate that, how you move on in college and beyond. That I think when there's a lot of rules that feel arbitrary, they're not learning, you're not growing, you're not figuring out a system for yourself. So I think a lot of that is just that, like, we have to treat young people like adults and have expectations for them so that they can become the adults that we also want to work
100%,
with.
100%. Well, so I mean, can you go deeper into that? Like if I am a parent that's thinking about putting my kids into this program and they're all about musical theater, but maybe they don't have the talent to go to Broadway, like what are some of the things that you really want them to get out of these programs?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was one of them, right? It's like, I would start with, honestly, like learning to have confidence in who I am, and owning who I am is really important. I think we try really hard not to force everyone into, becoming something that they're not. And you know what? Not everyone is going to go to Broadway, and I don't have the magic to know right now who is and isn't. So like there are certain people maybe who can sing higher than others, or who can, dance better than others, or whatever it is, right? But your skills can grow. So at this point in the process, the expectation is that everybody shows up as who they are and is trying to excel, like personally. Like, how do I take where I am right now and push myself beyond my perceived limitations so that whether I am like then end up as, in a boardroom or as a parent or whatever it is, that I can bring my whole self somewhere, and that I can push through challenges, and that I want to collaborate with others. I think all of that is just things that you're going to inherently become, will inherently become part of who you are, whether you end up on Broadway or whatever you end up doing. Which hopefully just means we're creating a richer society in the future.
100%.
Well, and hopefully that you want to be a steward of the arts and a patron, and that a leader in ways that are not necessarily on stage or even involved in the industry in that way, but that champion the arts for the next generations.
100%. It's so funny because I think people use like sports analogies all the time when they're talking about business, but I also see putting together a production as a very necessary piece. Like, you have to show up, you've got to do your thing, you've got to show up for your team members. Like, everything has to be done, everything has to run like a well-oiled machine, and stamina is needed.
Yeah. And then you have to add, the vulnerability part of it that theater requires of you, and bringing your whole emotional self into the room in such a very unique way that I think translates and transfers beyond.
Absolutely. Sorry, this is making me think of like my immediate experience with that, having gone to a corporate setting after being like really only in the arts and nonprofits, and how quickly I was celebrated in that setting. And that it was like, oh, these are all my theater skills that I'm like forever. Whoever's like, things aren't transferable. It's like, oh no, things are transferable. That it was like, I kept being promoted and like kept being put in front of people because I had that theater background, and that it was like, oh, I can improvise. I can be in front of folks. I can tell a story. I can be part of that production of like, thinking about a big, I'm going to say production again, that requires like all these individual pieces, and how do you bring them all together to make an impact? So it is to reiterate that it's like, you can stay with the arts by being on stage, being behind the scenes. You can stay with the arts by being an audience member. You can stay with the arts by taking those skills into a setting that feels totally unexpected, but that you will stand out because you have that experience.
What have you seen as a partner to Ginger and engaged in a multitude of these different programs? Like, what are some of the things that you've taken away?
Well, the very first thing I saw was the first thing I saw in Austin. when I moved here, which was a production of Seven Brides for Seven Brothers that you started and that Ginger directed before I knew either of you. So just saying.
So true.
And then I did see Sweeney Todd.
I have to say, I missed summer stock by 1 year. I graduated the year after, or the year before you guys started the program, but I'm up in it all the time, you know. Like my daughter was in Wizard of Oz as like a munchkin just this last year, and then we're doing the I'm judging with the HIAB program and all of that. So like she can't get rid of me anyway. But.
Well, I think a big thing that I have seen as another thread besides quality is access, which we all define that in so many different ways, and grantors to the arts often define it in a very specific way, and public consciousness defines it in a very specific way, and we as practitioners define it in a very specific way. But so many programs that are educational are and this is perfectly fine, but they are tuition based or they are fee based, and that can happen on a variety of different echelons and in a variety of different ways that people attempt to provide access. But I think that impact arts, I mean, impact is in the name, but I know that one of the big values is providing accessible entry into arts and arts education. And again, that's something that when you go to a production or an event, you don't necessarily see that because you may not have known. Were you not a donor or were you not a parent or a family member? You may not know the difference between this program that really values accessibility and entry point and this program that, you know, we all got to survive and we all got to keep going, but maybe does not hold that as a core central tenet of what it is that they are all about. And so I think that is another thing that just goes unseen sometimes, but that is a really incredible aspect of impact arts.
Can you add to any of that, or can you talk a little bit about your perspective?
I'll go back to my own youth. But that community theater that I grew up performing in the summers, we did not pay to participate. You auditioned, you got in, we built this community together, and there was no barrier to entry. And yes, we all had different capacities, but nobody was thinking about that. We were thinking about making art together, and it had such a different feeling because I did other programs that you paid to do. There were training programs. The difference in the way those two things felt and the way community was built was palpable. As a young person. And when we started building programs, that was one of the key things that was of value to me because I grew up with a lot of kids who could never have afforded those sorts of programs. And the number of students over the years that I have talked to who have said, like, if there had been an application for financial aid or for a scholarship, I wouldn't have applied. And part of that is that you are asking people, like, so you're saying if you have the means, you don't have to fill out this application. You don't have to submit a video. You don't have to do these 10 other steps to be able to join us. And then when you are a young person who is used to having to fill those things out, eventually you go like, well, am I going to get in? Do I have to fill out another one of these things? Do I have to call and ask if I can get blah, blah, blah? Honestly, it's not an even playing field. Yes, it is accessible, but it is not an even playing field. And I think then when you bring those people together, like, no one is thinking like, oh, that person got that part because they're blah, 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 parent paid for the yada, yada. Like, those things do separate you and they do take away from that feel of creating something together with everybody on the same, in this having gone through the exact same process to end up here. Yeah. And while it's hard for us, it's hard to fundraise. It's hard to figure out how to do the types of shows we want to do that have the quality that we have and not have the income from the students who are participating.
Right.
But it is 100% part of our core.
Yeah. So how do you fundraising?
Yeah.
Is that priority?
That and ticket sales, to be honest. And yes, so we don't give comp tickets away to the shows. You buy the tickets and they're I think priced very similarly to what other local theater. Yeah. But to me, what we're saying is, all right, all of you students who are working on this, you're working on something that has a value that people are going to pay to see. That is how the industry works, right? So we're trying to set up a system that is similar to what the industry would experience,
right?
Where people are paying to see it. Those ticket sales are helping to pay for the sets and the costumes and the venue and all of the things that are making this happen. And then we obviously fundraise above that so that we can, bring in the money that we need to create the entire program.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. So, okay, so we talked a lot about summer stock, which, so if people want to participate in it, they come and they audition. Is that right?
Yeah, we actually do video submissions now.
Okay,
yes,
great.
So you submit a video
and then if they're selected to be a part of the program, then they have to participate in other aspects of theater, correct?
That is true, yes. So,
which is so important. You don't just get to be an actor all the time.
Yeah. Well, and some college programs do a little bit of that, right? You do hours in a shop or you do, whatever it is. It is different when it's all the same group of people who you're supporting. Like, you love them. It's not like, because in college you go and you do crew hours or you go run this follow spot for a show where you don't necessarily know everyone or have that same care for the people that are on stage. And I think that To explain a little bit better, sorry. If you're in summer stock, you have a crew position as a performer. So you perform in one or more shows, and then you crew one or more shows. And so, and it's the process during the rehearsal process, you might be in rehearsal for a couple hours and then go work in the costume shop or the prop shop, or you might jump in with the marketing and the arts admin team who's doing marketing and fundraising, and you might be putting up posters or making phone calls or, any number of things that are supporting the whole. And, and for anyone who knows Michael McKelvey, he and I started Summer Stock in 2005, and that was one of the things that he and I talked a lot about, was just that, how do we create a program where people not just are understanding the value of what everyone is doing to create art, but also over these last 20 years, the number of people who have, jumped in one of those areas and have then made a career in that area,
right,
or could support themselves in that area while they were pursuing, being an artist, or a lot of the world now, in order to be an artist, you have to do 10 different things to create your own art. So having done audio or, and lighting and all of that stuff just is increasing everyone's potential now more than even we had thought in 2005 when we started it. Yeah. And so I think there is something, and you probably can speak more to this than I can, but when you are asked to do a job that you don't necessarily know how to do, but you know that you have to do it well because it's supporting people you love and care about, is a very unique position to be in, and kind of forces you to figure out some things that you may not be asked to figure out in other places in your life. And I think that probably is part of that that experience as well. I don't know if you had a.
I mean, I have the experience of my mom as a costumer. And so I was like, the thing that I did was I helped out in the costume shop. And so, I mean, that was I love my mom. That's so cool to do. But it's like both who are you supporting on stage, but also who are you supporting backstage? And so like when you're on those backstage teams too, the camaraderie that you build and that it's like, we get to know each other in the costume shop and that's its own fun. And so just the unique ways to get to know other people. And I think too, just because I love that y'all have that marketing element because I'm here as a coach, but I am also still in the arts and I'm writing things and I'm trying to learn how to produce things now as an adult, but just having that exposure at a young age as well. That's how do you do fundraising? Because if you want to stay in this industry, fundraising is going to probably be more important than how high can you sing. Yeah. So it is. It's how are we supporting each other on stage? It's how are we building that community even off stage? And how are we setting ourselves up for the future?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Also, high schoolers, when you do theater in high school, you're an actor or a technician. Those are your choices. You want to be on stage or backstage. And so because so many of our students are high schoolers, I think that experience is just pretty new to them. And so often they say, that they have gained an appreciation for what those technicians do back at their high school when they are primarily actors. We do not make the technicians act, so that's go together with.
Fair. That's totally fair.
But sometimes the technicians end up, working in the house and learning to, engage with people, which they chose something where you don't really do that very much. Awesome. So, we try to push
them a little bit.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, can you talk a little bit about TAP? So this is an educational piece.
Yeah. So we started TAP Camp in 2003, and it was a partner with St. Stephen's Episcopal School at the time. We still partner with them, and it is still there. For many, many, many years, it was a 3-week sleepaway camp for high school students and a 2-week for 9 to 13-year-olds. And we had acting, musical theater, and filmmaking, and it was a pretty robust, 3 to 4 week process. During the pandemic, because it was a sleepaway camp, we moved it online one year, and then I think the next year they went back to day camp, so we did a day camp, and then last year we did a day camp. We are finally getting to go back to sleepaway with a 1-week camp this summer. So we're tiptoeing back towards where we once were. I shouldn't say that. We are tiptoeing towards the future that hopefully has some sleepaway options. Because I think one of the things about sleepaway camp that is different than a day camp. One, you're not going home to your parents. And I don't mean that in any way except that when you go home and you have family members and you have other things in your life, your focus changes. When you are fully immersed in something that you're passionate about with a bunch of other people your age who are equally passionate, and you're going back to a dorm room and, continuing to talk about musical theater. It's so different because you just don't have, in a day camp, every day starts kind of new and we don't know where everybody went that night and what happened. And every day is like a refocus. And at sleepaway, you really can learn in 2 to 3 weeks at a sleepaway camp what you can learn in 3 months somewhere else because it is just so focused. The energy is focused. The everybody understands what they're doing and why they're here, and there's a certain love that you grow for each other because you're sleeping in the sharing space in that way that I found very unique. Ironically, my parents tried to send me to sleepaway camp many times as a child, and I called home and played sick and left all of them. So when I told my mom that I was starting a sleepaway camp, she was like, "Are you kidding me? What are you gonna do? Are you You hated sleepaway camp. And I was like, what, doesn't that make me the perfect person?
Yeah.
Because I did hate it.
Yeah.
Well, it was scary. It really was scary to like be away, to not have the comfort of home, and so I think we did when we started, we tried really hard to create a space where everyone felt, like there was someone to go to if you felt scared or unsure. There were like ways that you could, and we just kept everyone so busy, to be honest. Like, I was like, I think I got scared at all those camps because they were like, there was so much downtime that I was like,
yeah.
And it's hard socially to make friends with people you don't know. Like, you don't know anyone and you're like, oh, great,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, we created lots of programming where you got in, you were in groups that we created so that you're kind of, for lack of a better word, forced to engage with some people so that you feel a little bit more connected if you have some sort of, social, some people can just jump in and talk to anyone and some people can't.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of make space for that and anything in between. And I think more often than not, at the end of those 3 weeks, the people who were anxious at the beginning, were the ones that were like, I'm coming back next summer, So it was like really nice to see that. And I did not like sleeping.
Well, when you think about TAP camp, like what are the things that you want the kids to get out of it? Like what are the, kind of objectives there?
Yeah. I mean, I'll be honest, there is a similar thread across all of the programs that are kind of all the things we have been talking about. I believe that young people should feel respected and appreciated for who they are and what they bring to an arena, whatever it is. I think the arts are a unique way for us to do that for young people. And I think young people who gravitate to the arts need to be able to have that as part of what their growth, whatever it is. And I believe that the better the product, the more impactful the experience is. So I think all of those things, and what Adam was saying is like even at TAP camp, I'm going to juggle the educational value of it with putting on a show at the end where I go like, I did not know I could do that.
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah. And I think, obviously at TAP camp, we have, your voice class and a dance class and an acting. There's a lot more, technique and class work and structured training, whereas summer stock is get in and do it.
Yeah.
So and I sort of over the years, we have definitely had students, apply for summer stock where I say like, I think you could be ready for this. How can I help you go to 3 weeks of training at TAP camp so that you can really be ready for this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, we're trying to get to a place where the programs are feeding each other.
Right. Right.
And where if there is someone who's not ready for summer stock, there's something else that they can do to get there.
Yeah.
And that is sort of like a big picture, obviously, thing that we're all discussing right now as far as like what do all these programs look like? For several years, we were doing a college audition program, and we're talking about, how do we bring that back and what does that look like?
It's amazing.
And I think, supporting students who are looking at that next step and making sure that that process is daunting as all get out.
Yeah,
So,
all under the values, the shared values, because that can be a not value-laden proposition to prepare for college auditions. So that's why we think there is still a need for another entity in the mix to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, can you talk a little bit about, let's talk about Haya, because it's the one that we haven't touched on a little bit. And I will just say, this is my first year participating in the program. And I think one of the most beautiful things that you have done is really caused the judges to think about these programs in a vacuum, meaning not influenced by other programs, but to look at what the possibility is. And I just want to say, as you were talking about the other two programs, one of the things that I keep hearing is that you see the possibility in the students, the possibility in what it could mean for them in the future. And I see the same thing with what you've done with the HIA program, in that if a school doesn't have a crap ton of funding, what is the possibility that they have created with that, with those being their means? And it is so refreshing to see that, because I think we get so jaded by, how things are, the way that we perceive something based on things that we don't know that are happening behind the scenes. And so you've done just an amazing job with that. I just wanted to.
Yeah, thank you. I think, I would say it's similar. Yes, across the board, I have a very clear vision of where my values are. I think, just like every individual has a different set of skills or capacity or means or all of those things, a school program similarly is going to have a specific set of, financial constraints, or, you may have more parent involvement than another school. You may have more administrative support than another school. There's so many variables. You may have a theater on campus or not. Your theater might be a black box that you use as a classroom that's 100 years old.
Or a cafeteria.
Or a cafeteria. There is just so much variation. And then, you might be in some absolutely gorgeous new theater with all the bells and whistles, which doesn't actually mean that they have an easier time, right?
Right.
Because you could have that and have not a lot of actual finances and have to do all kinds of fundraising.
Or not know how to use the bells and whistles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
And I think so that's part of it, is how do you look at each one of these programs and say, with the information I have of what their resources are, how do I look at the show that they have produced and against their own potential, which is sort of what we talk about a lot. And it's not easy, and it's a really hard thing as a judge, to go and assess that, because we do have, you've seen Broadway shows, you've seen local shows, you've seen, and if you start comparing them all to each other, in all honesty, even comparing local shows to each other it's all apples to oranges, everybody.
And very subjective.
Very subjective.
Right.
And, you as a human like some shows better than other shows.
Yeah.
So you also have to go I need to separate that from this adjudication process. And I think, we have had a variety of schools nominated for Best Production. We've had a variety of, young people from a lot of different schools that have been, nominated in the Best Performer categories or supporting categories. And I think we have to keep working towards that, because just because your school doesn't have resources or has a ton of resources is not we just shouldn't be looking at that. We should be looking at, how are we creating art with what we have? And how are we providing an experience for young people at the high school level that is rich and that has and meaningful. And I know, 1 year, one of the schools that didn't have a lot of resources decided to do a green initiative and used all recycled material for their set.
Wow.
And it's that's a great way to approach, okay, we don't have a lot of stuff. Let's
get
actually
creative?
make a concept around that,
Fantastic.
So I think just encouraging schools to do the best that they can with what they have is important. And then bringing them to the ceremony where they get to see other students perform, other schools perform. I think I hear a lot of people say oh, wow, we could aspire to that. And that's where I think you're getting let's support everyone where they are, but then bring them together so that they can see what's happening. Because otherwise you're just at your
Exposed to it,
school
right.
doing your thing, have no idea what anyone else is doing. One of the things we talk a lot about is after we started the Heller Awards, the number of students that now go see each other's shows is huge. Like the second year, a group drove from Round Rock to Dripping Springs to go see. Yeah, I mean that's like a long trek for kids to go to support each other, and then you're really building a community of young people who care about each other, and they're getting outside of their school bubble to see what other possibilities are. And a lot of art is seeing other art, you know, and really going like, oh, that was a really cool thing. How do we use that? And how do I, as an actor, I go see someone do something and I go, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. And you just can't do that when you're just by yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is a way to kind of recognize schools in the greater Austin area for their musical productions, and it's an award ceremony, and then they get to kind of experience all of it. And
yeah, I think one of the unique things, and when I go visit the schools that are nominated, one of the things that we always say is like, I know this is an antiquated statement, but it's not American Idol. It's not, the competition is not in front of you. You're going to do the musical you're going to do that you would do whether we sent judges out to see it or not. You're not prepping something to be adjudicated. We just happen to send some professional folks from around the community to see it. They do some scoring and write some evaluations. And then we have a big nominations stream, and a lot of the schools will do a little watch party when the nominations are streamed. And then we start working our tails off because there's upwards of 400 kids perform in the ceremony.
Oh my gosh.
So it's really the 8 schools nominated for Best Production each do a number, and we go out there and sort of work the number to make sure that it's ready to go from their stage to Dell Hall, which is a very different a venue.
And nearly 40 schools this year too.
Yeah.
40 schools
participating.
participating.
40 schools. And so and then the lead nominees, Adam arranges a medley for each of the lead groups. And so they're getting to do a little snippet of their number from the show where all of the other nominees are singing backup, and we, choreograph the whole thing. And as you know, and as we've talked about, when you do theater and you all get together and rehearse together, you have a shared bond that is very unique. So when a winner is announced, as opposed to that's my competitor, they're now like, that's my best friend. Congratulations. And then, for years, a lot of the nominees, like the groups, for years have now kept up with each other. Some of them do when they come home for the holidays, they do like a lunch together, like just to catch up and see how everyone's doing. And I think that was one of the big goals when we started. Honestly, when I was asked to start these, I was like, I don't want to do a competition. Not that I have anything against competition. I'm a really competitive person. But I don't want all art to feel like competition, you know? And I don't want us to confuse what making art is with competition. Inherently, everything we do is competitive, right? You have reviewers come out and see the show. That's a competition. You have audience members you're trying to get to pay to come see the show.
You're auditioning.
You're auditioning.
Right.
Like, ultimately, the whole thing has a competitive nature.
Right.
But when you're in high school, how do we help you to navigate that competitive nature while building community and a network and people that you still love and appreciate and admire, even if they win an award that you were also up for?
Yes.
And one of the things, the Select Ensemble is this group that we auditioned at the beginning of the year, and they're sort of like the glue or the through line in the show, and also ambassadors for the program as a whole. And a lot of every year before nominations come out, I have a conversation with them and I say, you can set the tone at your schools for how people respond when the nominations come out, because you can have all the feelings you want, and you should. But learning to be a gracious human this is a great way for you to learn that, for you to be supportive of anyone who gets nominated, for you to, have your feelings about your, whether or not you got nominated, in knowing that there are a lot of people who are experiencing other emotions and being aware of that so that you can be, have the grace in that moment and then set that tone for all the other students at your school. And I think that's a big thing that we've tried really hard to do, is to make sure that they don't feel like they're all competing against each other, even if there's a competitive nature to it.
Totally.
More life lessons from Teacher Morris.
Yes.
It's so important, though. I mean, really, really.
No, it really is, because and a lot of the reason that these things are important to me is because either they were or were not instilled in me.
Yeah.
And because I did grow up in a pretty competitive environment. Our high school was really competitive with one-act play. We did tons of speech. I was at a speech competition every other weekend growing up, and I was gonna win first. But I look back and I'm like, that box of trophies is gone. I don't even know what we did with it. I couldn't care less. I can't tell you. I don't care about the first place trophies. I can tell you about all the fun times that I had at those competitions, and more than anything, I can tell you how it made me feel when I got to watch other people perform.
Right.
I can tell you, I have very clear memories of being in those rooms at those speech competitions and seeing people from other schools do things that I was, moved by or struck by, has a lasting impact on me. The competitive nature of it was just sort of a catalyst to push me personally.
Yeah.
And for all of us to care more, I guess. It was like you're forced to care because of a competitive aspect. One-act play, I think, my high school, definitely our teachers were like, you gotta win, we have to, and I was like, oh, okay. I guess we have to win.
Theater.
Win theater.
Exactly. This thing that's super subjective.
Yeah, exactly.
I tell the story to the directors every year before nominations come out. We do a Zoom meeting with all the directors, and I tell the story from my own experience in high school where it had been 30 years since my high school had gone to state in one act. And I was a junior, and we were going to state. So we're, performing on Bass Concert Hall. We were in Austin, the big city of Austin. And we got second at state. We were in like the largest school category and got second at state. The bus ride home, our director was complaining because the first place winner was from a very rich school in Houston, and their whole unit set was covered in red velvet, which they've like since made a rule that you can't do that, which is hilarious. But I didn't need to hear that.
Right.
Like as a high schooler, what I needed was to celebrate that we got to state and got second.
Yeah.
And so I think, for me, it's like, how do you celebrate just doing the thing?
Yeah.
Then how do you celebrate being nominated? Because that is great.
Yeah.
And then you can celebrate the winning. But it's like all of those are celebrations.
Huge milestone moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I come back to things that can be energizing, right? And that it's like jealousy is natural, but it is so much more energizing to celebrate other people. And so when we're looking at something that if it is something you want to dedicate your life to, that you've got to do the things that will make it then feel sustainable.
Yeah.
And, there's that whole thing about like give flowers now, even establishing a culture of let's celebrate one another, like what that does in return. Like you are also going to be celebrated by celebrating others.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, and I think, I think the bottom line of what we're hearing here is that you're like taking your own experiences and saying like, these are the things that I value, or these are the things that are really important to me. And how do I build all of these organizations and this infrastructure around the things that are core to me? Because I do think we talk about it all the time. Like that ends up being the guardrails by which we make decisions. And you've done an amazing, amazing job of that. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
Seriously,
Pat on the back.
like right, like objectively,
100%.
right? That it's like you are decades into this, and like I'm just going to even throw out COVID again, and just the number of organizations that weren't able to make it through
100%.
COVID. So
Right.
like
wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And that you're constantly adapting. You're pushing yourself. You're pushing the people around you. I'm really, so amazing.
I mean, I also am very grateful for all of the people who do, like Adam, who send copious amounts of time and energy to help create these programs and continue these programs. And there are a lot of people who donate a lot of time and energy to help us to build this and to create these opportunities for young people. So I also have a lot of gratitude for everyone involved and people volunteering in a million ways. So
I think it's a testament to your leadership, right? Because people they don't gravitate towards things that they don't believe in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We kind of touched on this really briefly, but you guys have had multiple people that have been a part of the programs that you have created that are now on Broadway or doing a million of other wonderful, amazing things, whether it's they're in business or they're, in the arts, they're being arts supporters. When you think about the vision or what's next for Impact Arts as a whole, like what are the things that you're looking to achieve?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a great question.
Leslie is excellent at that. Did they just get through Heller? And
get
the summer.
This is sort of the push part of the season.
Yeah.
So yes, we are definitely the Heller Awards are April 17th. The Tap Camp starts June. We also make an original movie musical as part of Summer Stock now, which is a whole new thing. So that'll start in June, and then Summer Stock's 20th season. So we did start to do some big picture strategy thinking in the fall, and now we're like, just get through the summer.
Yeah.
But all that to say, I think, it's a question right now. A lot of our students are high school and college students. And then we have Tap Camp for younger students, and then some years of Summer Stock. We can put young kids in a Wizard of Oz, which was super fun and great. But I think a lot of what we're looking at is how do we support younger students who are interested in what we do. That's a huge part of the conversations we're having. And then how do we, it's like it's stretching a little bit on both sides. How do we help the college students after they have graduated? How do we help those high schoolers get into college? And how do we support that younger group? And we're not going to be able to be everything for everyone. We are very, very well aware of that. But it is sort of a question of, how our programming can expand in those directions. And then I would say we also have a vested interest in having some clarity around how we can better support students in arts administration and tech and design, which is always a conversation we're having, and ways that, Summer Stock is our best sort of way to do that. But even with the Heller Awards, where we're celebrating students in design and tech, we just partnered with we've been partnering with Olden Lighting for a few years now. And we had kind of talked about how all of these performers get to work together, and they're in this show, and there's 400 of them performing, and we were like, what am I doing for those?
Yeah.
And so we are actually doing a workshop at Olden Lighting for students who are nominated in design.
That's very cool.
Sweet.
They're going to do a pizza party so that they can all meet each other from different schools,
cute.
and then also have a workshop, a master class provided by them. So we're looking at ways that we can expand what we're doing to support more students in more areas, and then also sort of just expanding the age range there.
You are so cool, Ginger.
You are.
That call,
amazing.
too cool for school.
Yeah.
Too cool for school. That's right. Create your own school.
That's right.
Well, okay, where can people learn more? Like buy tickets, donate, get the kids involved, etc. How do they learn about you?
The easiest thing is impactarts.org. That's where you're going to find most of the information about all of our programs, Summer Stock Tap Camp, Heller Awards. There's a little bit of more information about Heller Awards at thelongcenter.org. And I didn't talk about this, but last year we joined the Jimmies. So
yes.
two
You
students.
had the one
Yeah,
win,
so
the
we
Jimmy
sent
Award.
2 students. It was an incredible partnership with Texas Performing Arts where they are supporting us being able to send 2 students. And then, last year, one of our students won. So that's a super exciting additional
First year, you know.
super crazy, exciting thing. Adam and I actually got to go to the Jimmies, and we were there when his name was announced. It was insane.
I mean, again, a testament. Like, it's beyond just like the life skills, but like these kids you're seeing the results of the work that you guys are doing. And that's like just mind blowing.
It is thrilling. I'm not gonna I would be lying if I said it was not really exciting to see young people's success.
Totally.
You know, in a million different ways.
Yeah.
So great.
So impactarts.org. Check it out.
Follow at Impact Arts on social.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a big one.
Yeah.
Is it?
Arts
Impact Arts
ATX.
ATX on social.
Awesome.
That's a big one.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Ginger. We appreciate
Aw.
you.
Yeah, I
for
feel like a
joining
round of
us. It was so
applause.
fun.
Mhm.
We could.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
It
Y'all
was
are
so
so
fun.
sweet to think of me. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, and thank you guys for joining us. And please follow us on all major platforms. And we will see you soon.